Let's go.
Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. I'm your host, David Horsager. Join me as I sit down with influential leaders from around the world to discuss why leaders and organizations fail, top tactics for high performance, and how you can become an even more trusted leader.
Today's show is sponsored by Sourcewell.
Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. It's David Horsager, and I'm just thrilled about the guest we have today. He is trusted by many, and he's a new friend of ours, but you've heard of him. He's a 20-time New York Times best-selling author. He is the lead pastor of National Community Church in Washington, D.C. You got to hear about how he did things differently there, whether you're a corporate leader, a government leader, or a faith-based leader. We're going to talk about some things. The NCC owns and operates Ebenezer's Coffee House, the Miracle Theater, the DC Dream Center, which is an amazing story of faith and leadership. NCC is developing right now a city block into the Capitol turnaround. The 100,000 square feet of space will include an event venue, child development center, mixed-use marketplace, co-working space. Mark holds a doctorate from Regent University. He's, like I said before, New York Times bestselling author of over 20 books, Circle Maker, Pit of the Lion, In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day, Wild Goose Chase, Play the Man, Whisper. He just released a book we're going to talk about a little bit, and that is Win the Day. Mark and his wife, Laura, have 3 children. They live on Capitol Hill, and he is a real deal. Thanks for coming on the show, Mark.
David, thank you. And I am a native Minnesotan, born in Minneapolis, and so we have a little bit of a connection there.
We do, and I got talked into going on a 100-mile bike ride with you this summer. I don't know if you got talked into it or not, but our friends at Dad Awesome and Father for the Fatherless supporting their work. I think we're going to be riding together this summer, right? Or I might be
I love it. Yeah. We sure are. We're going to bike 100 miles, and I love having an annual challenge or an annual adventure that kind of pushes me outside of my comfort zone. It gives me something to train for. And so in this case, it's biking 100 miles and we'll just, we'll pep talk each other.
We will. And you just reminded me that 6 months, 2 days out. Well, 10 years ago now, I lost 52 pounds in 5 months. And basically I just now have this metric for every January. It's like get back into the rhythm. So I'll go up now 10 pounds, back 10, but then I always come back down. So it's like every year I need this rhythm checkpoint so that instead of being 50, I'm 40 off for a little while around Christmas and then back to 50. It's like you got to have that check-in and come back to it.
I can't believe you just dropped that little fact, because now I have 100 questions for you. I want to hack your habits, and I want to reverse engineer how that happened. Because I lost 30 pounds in 3 months, which I thought was pretty impressive. But I think you just you one up me or 22 pounds up me.
Well, that just means I went further astray, right? So. I felt like I need to be living this, what I'm speaking and preaching out, both physically, spiritually, mentally, and all that. And I was just kind of convicted on, I know better. I got to do this differently. So we're going to get into hacking the habits. But I have to say one other personal note here, because I'm going to hold it up for everybody watching. One of Mark's book, you can see it had a big impact on our family. We're actually not quite done with it right now, but we started reading it on Christmas break. We often read the one before that, you would know, Bob Goff book. But this book, it's called The Circle Maker. And we want to get into your new book and new work. Maybe do this, and then I want to talk about NCC, and then we want to jump to the new book. So The Circle Maker, a couple things. You said in this book, and this gets to our pillar of character in the trust work, my desire is that the people who know me the best would respect me the most. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I want to be famous in my own home, David. And it's hard to be famous in your home if you aren't home. And so I love what I do. I'm a entrepreneur by instinct. That includes starting a church, but as well as a coffee house, a dream center, and we have $29 million building that dates to 1891, the Navy Yard car barn that we are currently developing as quite a project 1 mile from the Capitol. I love those things. I love writing books, but at the end of the day, I'm a husband to my wife. I'm a father to my kids. And that's really how I try to judge myself, because, man, if you aren't going to get all 5-star reviews. I don't care who you are. You can be the best author, and you have to figure out who it is at the end of the day is really who's going to come to your funeral. It's those eulogy virtues that I think David Brooks talks about. So, success is when those who know you best respect you most. It's my wife, it's my kids. And, I think part of being, to borrow your phraseology, part of being a trusted leader, I think, is being better in private than you are in public.
Undeniably. And I think we talk about it all the time, in fact, when we did the research, the original research, one of the marks of leaders was, doing what's right, even not just when no one's looking, but when you don't feel like it.
Yes.
There's a big push these days, right? Do what you feel like. Our parents. Or parents today shout to their kids, "Hey, go have fun." Well, I never shout that to my kids. It's a big joke in the family. We talk about go be good. If you've read Kelly's work, maybe, and the research there that shows the more you be good, the better fun you have. If you seek pleasure for pleasure's sake in any area of life, you always get less, right? You seek pleasures just for pleasure's sake, physically, financially, sexually, you will always hurt someone and yourself. Do what's right, and you actually have a satisfaction or fun that's truer. So interesting. I'm going to come back to this. We do need to get to know you a little bit, at least our audience, perhaps. What about NCC and the start of that, and just a bit about you?
Yeah, we started a church with 19 people on Capitol Hill in 1996. And can I give the very short version?
Please.
I think 9 months in, there were 3 keys: a $50 check, a 4.7 mile prayer walk, which I detail in the Circle Maker, and a $400 drum set. This is, it's going to leave a lot of blank space in between, but we now have a DC Dream Center that served 55,000 meals during the COVID crisis in 2020. We've done 273 mission trips, given $25 million to missions, but it started with a $50 check. I'm a big believer. You do little things like they're big things. And at least in my faith matrix, God will do big things like they're little things. And so, and then that 4.7 mile prayer walk, somehow it is translated into 6 properties that we own on that prayer circle, worth about $75 million. And David, I want to be careful here, because that's kind of coming out of the gates and throwing out some numbers. But again, it's a 25-year trajectory, and we're not just trying to build a church; we're trying to bless a city. And a good example of that is we're bringing a child development center to our city here in about a month's time, and it's one of our mayor's top initiatives. And so we want to meet real needs in real time, and so we can come back to some of those things, but I want to say one thing. It's
a great journey, and it's a great story of faith and leadership. And I think for everybody, whether you're running a business or a government or a ministry, stewardship matters. And I think one thing about that I've talked when I talk to, pastoral leaders or ministry leaders is, especially churches, it's the stewardship thing. It's like it's used in many cases 1 day a week or a few hours, basically a week, and we get these big, beautiful buildings that could actually be reaching people and touching people in so many other ways if we thought entrepreneurially or at least differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there are ways of doing church that no one's thought of. That's kind of what gets me up in the morning, keeps me up at night. And I would say the same thing of any industry. I mean, come on, Netflix, walk into Blockbuster and offer to be sold, and Blockbuster turns down the $50 million offer of what is now a $125 billion company. They were stuck in the past instead of thinking forward. And so whatever it is, from business to to nonprofit, I think what got us here, of course, isn't necessarily going to get us where we need to go next. And if the COVID crisis has taught us anything, it might be that the game is kind of changing right under our feet in 1,000 different ways.
So how are you innovating these days? How are you, what are you thinking now? Like, what's the big dream now?
Yeah, well, there's been a shift in terms of philosophy and priority that we've realized that in the world that I live in, it's very easy to go to church, check a box, and check out Monday to Friday. But it's got to be a daily thing, whether you call it Win the Day or the Daily Edge, David. Either way, yesterday is history, tomorrow's mystery. You really have to learn to win the day. And so we're kind of changing the way that we approach things and helping people, perhaps the way I would say it is be less codependent on a pastor. Mm-hmm. And a little bit more intrinsic motivation and the ability to practice certain daily habits that will help them grow spiritually. And of course, that has a huge emotional, intellectual, and relational payoff.
Well, we might come back to the Circle Maker because we have been so impacted by it. But let's talk about Win the Day a little bit here. First of all, why'd you write this one? I mean, 20 books. New York, you're striking a chord. It's not like people that write a bunch of books and don't. I mean, New York Times bestseller, that is not easy. So, but tell us about this one. Why this one? Why now?
Well, whatever goal you're going after, you have to reverse engineer it into daily habits. And so we're going to ride this bike ride August 28. Well, we better be reverse engineering and have a training plan. And we need to know how many miles we're going to cover to kind of prepare ourselves for that moment. And so a few years ago, and I don't want to sound like a ultra marathon athlete because I am not, but I did run one marathon. And the only way you do it is by doing 72 training runs that cover 475 miles. Then and only then are you able to accomplish that goal. So what I wanted to do was go ahead and identify the leg measures that you want, but you have to reverse engineer, identify those lead measures, and then really put them into practice. And so came up with 7 habits to help you stress less and accomplish more. And whatever it is going to happen one day at a time.
This is great. You know, 75% of New York resolutions, New York also, by the way.
Yes.
New Year's resolutions fail in the first month. What are we doing about that?
Yeah, we get overwhelmed when you think in those long timelines. I love asking the question, can you do it for a day? David, no one has ever said no to that. Whether you're trying to break a habit or make a habit, anybody can do anything for a day. And it's really about winning streaks and losing streaks. I mean, very few people, their lives, it's not a single mistake. It's allowing that mistake to be repeated and become a bad habit. And then you have to, of course, flip that coin and you've got to figure out how to get those small wins. And then you start getting a winning streak. And guess what? In fact, I would even throw this out there. Anybody who's ever been through AA, they can tell you how many days they've been sober.
Yeah.
It's this idea if you want every day to count, you have to count the days. In fact, do we have time for kind of a fun, quick story?
Let's do it.
A couple of years ago, I did a talk for Buzz Williams, Virginia Tech at the time. He's now the Texas A&M basketball coach, but they make it to the Sweet 16. They're playing Duke. I've known Buzz for a long time. He said, come and talk to the team. And so I give a talk. It didn't help. They still lost to Duke. My apologies. But I'll never forget something that Buzz said. He told the team that it was day 1,811 as the coach of Virginia Tech. Okay, David, everybody who's listening to this podcast right now, how many of you can name the exact number of days that you have been in your current employment? It was so impressive to me that here is someone who is so conscientious about making every day count that he counts the days. And so I think, part of what I want to try to accomplish is you got to live in day-tight compartments. You got to live like it's the first day and last day of your life. And part of that, a wise writer of wisdom literature, the psalmist, said, number your days. It's this idea of counting the days so that you make those days count.
Hey, it's Ann with the Trust Edge team here. As you know, we are passionate about helping you and your team perform at your best. And that's why David wrote his new book, Trusted Leader. This true-to-life parable follows the story of a CEO who uncovers the root issue threatening his organization's success. And in the back half of the book, David provides a roadmap for even how to solve those root issues. Get Trusted Leader for your team, your organization, or even just for yourself at trustedleaderbook.com.
You talk about in the book the breaking, the best way to break a habit. Tell me about that.
Yeah,
because that's a problem. A lot of times we want to have. I'll just tell you this one time. I said to an audience, how many of you would like to have a new habit? How many I want to have? And I'm saying, all the audience went up, all their hands went up, right? And then I said, okay, how many of you have ever, you all want to, how many of you ever actually broken or started a new habit? Like lost your, 20 pounds or more, you quit smoking, whatever it is, some reasonable habit. Like 6%. Everybody wants to, but almost nobody does. How do you do it?
Well, the idea of habit stacking has become really, really popular. The idea of coupling a harder habit to cultivate with one that comes more naturally. But I like this idea of habit switching, that you take something, a bad habit. Let's call it complaining. I'm sure there isn't anybody listening to this podcast who complains, but I know some people who they can complain about just about anything. It's masterful, their ability to find something. And I'm having a little bit of fun. You have to, and this is habit number one in the book, you have to flip the script. How? Well, I can turn a complainer into someone who is a very different person, someone who's grateful for almost everything, almost all the time. How? Gratitude journal. It's not complicated. You have to train that reticular activating system at the base of the brainstem, which determines what we notice and goes unnoticed, to look for things that you're grateful for. And you have to write it down. It's the generation effect in psychology that if you write it down, you have a better memory for it. You do that 30 days, 40 days, 100 days. I don't care who you are. I don't care how ingrained the complaining habit is. I think we can flip that script if we do it enough days in a row.
I love that idea for two reasons. But one of our studies found the most repelling traits in people, you could name them, right? Arrogance, all these different things, right? But the number one most magnetic trait in individuals, many people, a smile, right? No. Oh, empathy, right? Oh, no. Number one most magnetic trait in individuals, gratitude. People love to be around those that are grateful. And by the way, as we know, grateful people don't tend to, almost all the negatives go away. Grateful people don't tend to be entitled. They don't tend to be complainers. They don't tend to be, they don't even smell bad, right? So grateful people, they are magnetic, and that's genuinely grateful.
Yeah. You know what, David, that is fascinating. And this may be a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I think it's worth it. In Judaism, an Orthodox Jew would pronounce 100 blessings a day. In the Talmud, which is a commentary on the Old Testament, it says that if you fail to give thanks to God for a blessing, it's as if you have stolen it from him. And so this idea that some of us are guilty of grand larceny, or at least petty shoplifting. It's this idea of giving thanks for absolutely everything. So my wife and I live by a little mantra, flip the blessing. So whenever someone does something for us that we consider a blessing, we always look for a way to flip that similar blessing for someone else. And sometimes it's in very, very small ways.
What does it look like?
Well, I'm afraid to share this example, but it's the one that is the most pronounced in my life. Our first year as a church, we moved into the movie theaters at Union Station, but we didn't have lights to illuminate that theater. And I'll never forget, someone gave us a $5,000 gift. It was a game changer. At the time, our income was $2,000 a month as a church. And that $5,000 gift, it impacted us in a profound way. I happened to sit on a charitable trust where we do a lot of $5,000 gifts. We happen to give a lot of $5,000 gifts as a church to causes that we care about. Why? Because every time we do it, I'm flipping the blessing from what was given to us way back in 1996. And so, but I'm sorry, but if you give me a gift, there's also a good chance it's going to get re-gifted. Yeah. Because to me, it's more fun to get it and then flip it. And so most of the gift cards that come my way end up in the hands of my children. They love it.
That's a good gift. I love it. So let's jump down here a little bit. You did talk about kind of this distinction between minutes and moments.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. Time is measured in minutes. Life is measured in moments. And I love this. There are two words in the Greek language for time. One is chronos, which is where we get chronology. It's clock time. And you and I both care about managing. If you don't manage your calendar will control you. And so, I believe in time management, no doubt. But the other word is kairos, and it can be interpreted time or opportunity. And David, this is kind of the sixth sense. It's the soft skills of leadership. It's recognizing, maybe the best way to say it is instead of just counting the actual cost, it's counting the opportunity cost, which is a much harder thing to do, but it's the ability to read a situation or read another person and recognize, okay, here's a teachable moment if you're a parent, or here is an opportunity to take a risk if you're in business. And so that ability to identify those moments is huge. And what I want to do is help people not just live a long life. I would love to blow out 100 candles someday, David. I'd love to live to 100. Call me crazy, but I really want to make sure that the moments add up to more than a few hours or a few days, because that is where life becomes meaningful.
With that, you do talk about time management. You have some tips on time management, or at least some thoughts on time management. You talk about even you don't find time, you make it. But tell us, how does that affect us? We're leaders around the world. We have to deal in this framework of time and people, and we want to mix it the right way and do our call to leadership out facing, and we want to do our call to leadership in facing, to the family. What do you do?
Yeah, I would throw out just a couple of very practical tips. And some of these are hard lessons learned. I mean, for example, you have to establish boundaries. Why? Because saying yes to one thing is saying no to something else. And so it goes back to this idea of I want to be famous in my home. I made a decision years ago that I would only do 7 overnight speaking trips a year. Why? Because I was doing a lot more than that. And my family was getting not the best of me. They were getting the leftovers. And so you have to make some of those hard decisions. But then when it comes to kind of the pragmatics, let's have a little bit of fun. I'll throw this out there because it's one of my favorite studies. A NASA study found that a 26-minute nap increases productivity 34%.
Wow.
And by the way,
there's a lot of people who'd like to hear that.
Yeah, right.
Are you a napper? Do you take naps?
I am. And so 90% of my creativity happens before noon. That's my chronotype. I'm a morning person, but if I take a nap, I get 2 windows of creativity. And so part of time management is kind of self-knowledge of understanding the way that you're wired and even when to do what tasks. And so,
give us your routine really quick. I want to come back to any tips you have, but this is interesting for a lot of people. we talk about the importance of sleep and eating right, and exercise and drinking water and source of strength. If we're going to, be great leaders, it starts a lot of times with self-leadership.
Yeah.
But tell us every routine is different, but what have you found for yourself? Because you have a massive responsibility.
Yeah. Well, I have different seasons. And so in a writing season, my routines are going to look a little bit different. I'm going to set my alarm clock earlier in the morning. I'll build in some nap time. Now I'm feeling a little childish, but I make no apologies for it. I'll have our teaching team carry a little bit more of the load. I don't take outside appointments beyond kind of our immediate context of our staff. And there's just no other way for me to write a book. That's what a writing season, I have a start date. I have an end date because of Parkinson's law. If you have 2 weeks, it'll take 2 weeks. If you have 2 months, it'll take 2 months. And so I have just kind of jerry-rigged my world in a way that I basically start on my birthday, November 5th. I finish a book on Super Bowl Sunday, which is the first Sunday in February, and that gives me 3 months. And it is the winter months by intention because I'm less inclined to be outside. And I actually don't mind getting up when it's dark. I feel like I'm beating the sunrise, and it kind of gives me a jump on the day.
So what time is that? What time do you, on the writing months, what time is the normal?
Well, it has a 5 in front of it. We just got a puppy dog that totally destroyed our routine and rhythm. And so now I'm walking our dog in the morning, which is giving me a little bit later start. But boy, she's cute, so it's worth it.
Yeah. So you have the 5 in front of it for writing time, and you write till when, and then when do you do your regular leadership stuff? Let's just take January 10th. On January 10th, or November 27th, we'll start there. What was the writing? You got up at this time, you started writing. What's just a quick rhythm of life for you in that phase?
Absolutely. I should just add, I usually do a 2-day or 3-day writing retreat at the beginning of that season to kind of frame out my thoughts, and then a 2 or 3 day to kind of close it out. But a normal day, it wouldn't be uncommon for me to write from 6 in the morning till 6 at night. And I live 4 blocks from where I work, so I save commute time. I'm home in 5 minutes. So I try to be pretty religious about getting home at 6 o'clock. And then a nap kind of built in there in between. And sometimes it's a nap, but I know myself well enough. Sometimes it's a 5K. It's a 3.1 mile run, which is about a half hour. Or sometimes if I need a quick jolt, it's 20 push-ups. And so I find, or let's be honest, I work right above our coffee house. So sometimes it's a second latte with 2 shots.
So that now, how is that different right now? So you're off the writing season, you're back into the full-on leadership kind of role. What's that look like?
Well, then I have meeting days where I stack meetings wall to wall because I want to be in meeting mode. And then I have study days where, much of what I do is communicate. And one little kind of tip or trick, David, that has helped me. You and I both believe in the importance of one-on-one with other people and investing in other people. But I think leaders also have to do the math. And so I'm cognizant of the fact that if I take the number of people who attend our church times a 30-minute message, it now adds up to about 8 months of time. And so I better put aside 20, 25, sometimes 30 hours to prepare that one message because I've got thousands of people who are giving me 30 minutes of their time. And so I try to do the math with the different things that I do. And it kind of helps me keep on task, in part because I'm a people pleaser. So it's hard for me to say no to anybody for anything. And so that's kind of part of my process of trying to figure out how to spend my time. So meeting days, study days, days that maybe are more visionary. And on those days, here's a little formula I employ: a change of pace plus change of place equals change of perspective. And so I might go over to the National Gallery of Art, which is a few blocks from me. I may walk the National Mall, but I need a change of place. And then I also need a change of pace. And that kind of helps me get fresh perspective on some of the problems we're trying to solve and some of the goals that we're trying to accomplish.
So many leaders have said this, that the key to as far as keeping learning, reading and travel. You travel, you get perspective. So that can be outside your door, obviously, but that's also, there's something happen if you're, from Minnesota and you go to Bangkok and Dubai and Norway, right? Or Uganda or Kenya. It's like there's some learning that happens that can't happen almost without the experience. So whether that's to the Smithsonian where you are across the street, or whether that's out in nature.
And David, could I just add one thing? Because it can be a staycation. I occasionally do a silent retreat where I turn off my phone, I get rid of the white noise, and I try to do some what audiologists would call ear cleansing, right? Because we're constantly bombarded by news and fake news and algorithms that are designed to keep us in our echo chambers and kind of 100 other things. So I think a silent retreat, you can stay right where you are, just turn off your phone, and it's a change of pace.
As long as you don't have kids and a dog, right?
Yes.
So I'm just affirmed that. I think I said it somewhere, but I don't think I've said it on the podcast. For me, back in 1999 when we started our first business, I'd been in director of a youth and family organization before that. But when I had this time, things were going well. I was speaking 100 times a year, whatever. And for me, I didn't have the limit like you had. Felt like that's what I was supposed to be doing. But I had this time early on, and I went away to a hermitage, actually not far, less than an hour from our place. And got away a couple days, and I didn't, I had this quiet time. It was a neat place. You don't see anybody. They give you this fresh bread and cheese and apple, like this basket of delicious food. So you don't see anybody. You just go and you're by yourself and all this, and you can go for walks, beautiful nature out there and everything. But I came back from that, and I was just clear on one thing, and it was just getting rid of the noise. I'm supposed to go toward my graduate work, and it's supposed to be on trust. And so unlike a lot of people that go through their grad work and then by the end of their thesis, like, what am I going to do a thesis on? Every paper I ever wrote up until even the end was all around, trust and leadership. But I don't know what happened exactly. Can't explain it. But I knew after that time away exactly what I was supposed to do.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I bet there are a lot of people who right now are Googling hermitage.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So this is fantastic. Tell us about this equation in this most recent book, Win the Day. Deliberate practice plus desirable difficulty equals durable learning.
Yeah, I'm pulling those ideas from a few different sources, and they'll sound familiar to a lot of listeners. Deliberate practice, of course, is from Anders Ericsson, the brilliant psychologist who kind of coined the 10,000 hour rule. It was popularized by Malcolm Gladwell, but he says there's naive practice and deliberate practice, and there's a big difference. If you play music or play sports, you know what I'm talking about. There's a mindless way of doing things that actually will turn into bad habits. Mm-hmm. And then desirable difficulty. That to me is fascinating because, David, I define my job as a pastor or as a spiritual coach this way. My job is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And so I want to get people out of a comfort zone into a growth mindset. And part of that is harder is better. It just is. Look back at your life. What are the moments that you cherish? One of them is coming up for us. It's going to be that 100-mile bike ride. Our quads are going to be screaming at us and saying, what in the world were you thinking? But it's going to be an awesome moment because it's going to be painful, because it's going to be hard, because it's going to push us. And so I think if it's too easy, we get bored. If it's too hard, we quit. And so there's this idea of JMD, just manageable difficulty, which I love. And it's kind of that Goldilocks zone of where we need to be. And then that's what results in that durable learning.
Hey, it's Sam from the Trust Edge team. Most training and development initiatives don't last or even solve the root issue hindering your organization. That's where Trust Edge coaching certification comes in. Trust Edge coaches are equipped with a suite of tools to identify, benchmark, and close gaps in trust for good. Because when you solve the real issue, you get measurable results in a culture where people actually want to make an impact. So whether you're a coach with your own clients or a leader training people inside your organization, check out trustedgecoaching.com and see how you can start solving the root issue and get lasting results in your business. And now back to the show.
There's so much more we could cover here. I can't agree more. One thing I'm getting pushed on right now, so I have this athletic coach, or I guess fitness coach, and I did this when I was really losing the weight, is like, push yourself until you're sore. It doesn't matter what you do, push yourself until, because if you do that, instead of just like I would get on the elliptical, which is good, she said, if you push yourself till you're sore, that works for 48 hours. And that will help you, because your muscles have to break down and build back up bigger. And that will help you so much more. And I've learned, no matter what I do, that's like HIIT training too, but it's just like, you can do it shorter, but if you just do push-ups and do them again, do another set till you're sore. Do sit-ups till you can't do them anymore. Like pushing to that point, all of a sudden you get stronger, and it turns out it's a lot easier to stay healthy in other ways too. But interesting, desirable difficulty.
Well, I think it's fascinating. According to the law of requisite variety, if you do the same exercise over and over again the same way, it loses effectiveness because your muscles adapt to it. And so really what trainers do is they confuse your muscles. And I think that is so critical when it comes to self-leadership. And not just physically, but I found that to be true spiritually.
Tell me about it.
Well, every year, my most prized possession is a 1934 Thompson Chain Reference Bible that belonged to my grandfather, Elmer Johnson, who, by the way, happened to be the first municipal judge of Fridley, Minnesota.
Wow.
And taught at Northwestern, taught at the University of Minnesota.
First place we lived in Minnesota was Fridley, Minnesota. The basement of an 86-year-old lady, Clara Miller.
Wow.
No windows, no bathroom, no kitchen, black mold on the walls. That's where Lisa and I started back in, as we have to tell our kids, back in the 1900s when we started our first business. But,
yes, come on. Well,
Fridley, Minnesota. Love it.
Who knows?
Okay.
We might have crossed paths back in the day. But so I want to, every year, what I'm getting at, I want to have enough Bibles to leave for my kids and grandkids, because I love seeing what he underlined and what he wrote in the margin. But the other thing I do is I choose a different translation, because it makes my synapses fire in a little bit different way. So it almost kind of confuses maybe the version that I've memorized. I want to hear it in a different way so that it produces some different thoughts. And so, just beyond the Bible, Ivan Pavlov said, if you want to have new ideas, read old books. And so, it's reading anything and everything that will just make you think in slightly different ways. And I might add, reading some things that you should read, some books that you don't completely agree with when you're done. Otherwise, you fall into this binary thinking. But I live by this little maxim that truth is found in the tension of opposites. True wisdom has two sides. And so we've got to get better as a culture and get better as leaders at looking things from different angles. And that's coming from someone who has hundreds of Hill staffers and dozens of members of Congress and cabinet members who attend our church, and we are bipartisan. We have people across the aisles. And so what we're trying to do is sort of stand in that gap, and we've got to be able to dialogue back and forth. And I think when you do that, you realize it's not just A or B, David, it's sometimes C.
We need it so much right now. And we talk about building trust across. You don't have to like people to trust them and to build trust, right? This whole idea. There was an article this week from a PhD from Biola that wrote basically, oh man, I wish I had it in front of me. We can put it in the show notes, but basically seeing both sides, right?
Yes.
And if we could do more of that, we could actually have a conversation, see people as people. There's a whole lot of research on what one reason trust has gone down in Capitol Hill is in the old days, they'd ride the train all the way back to California together, the Democrat, the Republican. They would spend time together. They'd go for a beer together at night. They don't see each other as humans now because they never spend time together. They come, they battle on the House floor, the Senate floor. They go back, they don't see each other. And there's a host of other reasons. As you know, I've worked with a group in Congress trying to build trust across Republicans and Democrats, across senators and representatives. And it's great work today. I mean, not great work. When I say great, I mean like I'm holding heaviness, right? It's work, but it's even more so because of a lot of the ways we're systemized against trust on the Hill and in our government. And there's a whole lot more to say about that.
Yeah. Well, David, on behalf of everybody listening to this podcast, keep doing that.
Well, I often, one time I flew back from Congress and I was in front of this group, and I was speaking, and the CEO introduced me and said, well, he's spoken to Congress before, and obviously he's not very good. Because clearly it's not making a difference, at least from what we know. So, anyway, we keep on keeping on. There's so much more to the book, Win the Day. There's so much more to the others. Maybe one more thought on Win the Day here. I want you to just touch on the grand gesture and what that means.
Oh man, it's one of my favorite parts of the book. There is a guy, Cal Newport, who wrote a wonderful book called Deep Work, and I think that's where I first stumbled across the idea. But let's be honest, grand gesture is nothing new. It's as old as Noah building a very big boat. It's this idea that when it comes to life goals, you do have to reverse engineer them into daily habits, into small wins. But there are moments, David, when you've got to go big or go home. You have to make a dramatic decision. I won't ruin the book, but it's one of my favorite stories about if you wondered how we got all of these skyscrapers, how did the world get so tall? I would credit the inventor of the elevator safety brake who pulled off one of the greatest sales pitches ever in the 1853 World's Fair. His name was Elisha Otis. And now I have shared a little bit, but I'll say that cutting the rope was a key part of his stunt.
And that was one of the principles in the book.
Yes.
That was the 7 habits.
Yep.
Right.
Habit number 5. And we've got to find ways personally to create our own grand gestures. Two simple examples for me. When I was 19, I walked into the admissions office at the University of Chicago and I said, you can have your scholarship back. And it was a defining moment for me. I had a full ride scholarship. I was playing basketball. On paper, it was perfect. But I felt like there was something else for me to pursue, and giving up that scholarship, it was a grand gesture that not everybody agreed with, but it was a turning point. Packing all of our belongings into a 15-foot U-Haul and moving to Washington, D.C. with no place to live and no guaranteed salary was a grand gesture. And so, and I would say using my 35th birthday to set a book deadline was a grand gesture. So what is it that you need to self-impose, so to speak? What is that commitment device that is going to help you go after that goal that is in your heart?
A grand gesture, even though I really, this is so critical. I just think of so many things for me, where the little things make the big difference, no doubt about it. But the big gesture for me, funny one for you, back when I didn't have much then, and I said, I knew I had to lose the weight. I told the staff I'd give $2,500 to eat if I wasn't at my high school weight by May 1st. For me, that was a little grand gesture to say, my wife's like, what are you talking about? But that planting in the stand and saying, I'm going to give you $2,500. And of course, what do they start doing? Bringing in donuts. But I wanted to, I had to make a mark out loud that I'm committed to this or I owe you something big. Let's go, a little fun play on words here, but go back full circle to Circle Maker for 2, because everybody should win the day. Your work is fantastic. It's inspiring. It's actionable. And you know what? It's true. And so You can look up Mark Batterson with a B, Batterson, and if you don't know him, many of you do. Win the Day is his new book. But we got to go back to a couple ideas here. In The Circle Maker, 2 highlighted sentences. 1, may you die young at a ripe old age.
Yes.
I could explain it. I've read it and underlined it, but let's have you do it.
Oh, I love this word, neoteny. It's the retention of youthful qualities into adulthood. Don't you love? I love someone who's young, who is maybe wise beyond their years, but I love someone who is old, who has this playful spirit, who has this holy curiosity about life, who knows that they are not finished. And so it's this idea of retaining those youthful qualities. And I talk about it some in Win the Day too, with Wind the Clock. This, it would be a whole nother podcast on Ellen Langer and her work with mindfulness and the way that, one thing, do you know how a doctor ascertains your age? The way everybody else, by asking your birth date. There's no other way for them to know. And if you don't believe that different people age at different rates, you have not been to a class reunion. And so there is a way, I think, to stay young. And part of it, David, is vision. Without a vision, the people perish. But with a vision, you're never past your prime. It's something, it almost acts as a preservative that kind of keeps us young because we have something that we're going after.
I think one of the parts in the book that I loved about that idea, by the way, was this how we've even statistically lost the ability to dream. We start as kids, we're dreaming about this, dreaming about that, and there's a lot of data on how we stop learning as much once we go to a public education system in some ways. But what I just started thinking about, what about dream? My dad, it was similar to one of your stories in the book, and I'm so grateful for him. A lot of my trust really work comes not from the research, but living under a great leader on a farm growing up. But I was with him recently. He's 91, runs they have, 1,500 acres, 1,200 acres, something like that. But I looked at this new beautiful grove. He planted all these fruit and flowering trees. It's about a half mile or a mile from our house. So it's a different property. It's across a tar road and whatever, but it's part of their land. I said, what were you kind of thinking here, Dad? And all he said was, somebody will enjoy it. Somebody will enjoy this. And I just thought, he's not thinking about himself at all. They're not going to be, even if he gets the century, which I think he will, he's not going to see the fruit of that labor. So that gets us to at least my last question from the book, and then I got to ask you our quick fire questions to close. But the think long idea.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. That's it's kind of that idea of my dad, right?
It really is. In fact, the book revolves around this true legend about Honi, the circle maker, who draws a circle, kneels in that circle and says, Sovereign Lord, I swear before your name that I will not leave this circle until you send rain. It's a prayer that saved a generation while they were in a devastating drought. But there's a second story that I share in the book that I might like it just as much, that he's walking by someone planting a carob tree that takes 70 years to mature, and says, why are you doing that? You're not going to enjoy the fruit of the tree. And he said, well, my parents planted trees for me, and I'm planting them for my grandchildren. And so it's this mindset of the 200-year present. I write about it a little bit in Win the Day, Elise Boulding. It's this idea that we've got to, someone was born 100 years ago, and then there are babies being born today that'll live to 100. So we kind of live in this 200-year present, and we've got to think about that third and fourth generation. We think right here, right now, but it's always about the third and fourth generation. And so if you want to do something that's big, you're going to have to think long. And I think you have to have some life goals, David, that are going to take a lifetime to accomplish. And again, that's kind of what keeps us young. And by the way, on that note, I've got 100 life goals. I've got 7 steps to setting life goals. And that's free to anybody who wants it. Could I share my website just in case people want to?
Let's do that right now. And we'll put it all in the show notes, trustedleadershow.com. But where can we find you? Where's the best place? Let's stop right now to do it.
Yeah, markbatterson.com. And there's nothing that costs anything on that site. It's all my goal, David, is to add value. And if I can add value, then that puts a smile on my face. And so I'm a big believer in life goals. You want to accomplish 100% of the goals you don't set. And then I share 7 steps to setting those life goals. And so folks can find it right there.
Perfect. markbatterson.com. We'll put that in the show notes. Well, here we go. We gotta land this plane. This has been a treat. We could have 3 more of these, probably 5 more, and I can't wait to be biking next to you until I need to catch my breath and grab a glass of water in August. But let's let a couple of our quick fire questions. Not going to go through all of them today, but a favorite book or resource right now.
Oh my. Okay, right now. Upstream is a book that I'm reading right now. I think. Well, since you're in Minnesota, it's the headwaters of the Mississippi River, right? By the time it gets to New Orleans, wow, there's a lot of power. There's a lot of water rushing into the Gulf, but it always starts upstream. And I think that's true with habits. It's true with character. I bet you would even say it's true with trust. It's this idea of going upstream.
Love it. Do you have a favorite, app or gadget or maybe it is a productivity tip again, but
yeah, I really like TimeHop. I'm a pretty future oriented person, but TimeHop reminds me, shows me pictures from a year to 10 years ago. And I kind of like that. It keeps me grounded and reminds me to keep evolving my fashion as well.
All right. 2 questions left. Okay. I'm going to go to this one. One big hope for the future yet. Maybe it's one of your maybe it's one of your 100 goals, but what's your big hope, big bucket list, big hope for the future that you're thinking about right now?
Wow. If we're talking go big or go home, I really want our church to demonstrate what it looks like to be a multicultural community. This idea that Dr. King talked about of being a beloved community. And I happen to believe that church ought to be the most diverse place on the planet and the most creative place on the planet. And those are 2 sides of the same coin. So if you're asking me what I'm hoping for, I really would love for us to demonstrate what it looks like to have our differences not divide us, but be something that we celebrate. And we're working hard towards that and finding our way forward.
I got to jump in here. How do you do it? People are working, whether it's companies or, all kinds of organizations, churches, we're trying to create the beauty of healthy diversity and inclusion and equity. How are you doing it? People said to me the least diverse day of the week is Sundays at 11 a.m., right? Or least diverse time. How do you do it?
Yeah, no easy answer, as you know. You have to be unoffendable for starters. I think you have to put pride on the altar. I think you have to stay humble and stay hungry. And those sound like nice maxims, but that's a mindset. It's a mindset. And I would add one more thing to the mix. And this is something that my mentor taught me, David. 2 kinds of people in the world. The first kind of person walks into a room and they're thinking, here I am. They see themselves as the solution. Their ego barely fits through the door. It's all about me, myself, and I. Second kind of person, there you are. It's all about everybody else. It's all about adding value. It's not going to happen until we have this there you are kind of mindset. And so I'm grateful for a mentor who taught me that a few years ago. And that's how I try to approach life. I think if we keep checking our ego at the door, some really good things could happen.
There's so much more. Thanks, Mark. This has been fun. I can't wait to see you. Maybe I'll see you before then. But the final question, it's the Trusted Leader Show. We ask this one to everybody. Who's a leader you trust and why?
I would probably go right back to that mentor of mine. He's a former college president. He's a former pastor, worked on Capitol Hill for many years. In fact, helped that National Prayer Breakfast happen in February every year. His name's Dick Foth, and he's someone that is invested in my life immeasurably. Took me under his wing when I was pastoring 19 people 25 years ago. And I love surrounding myself with people who stretch my faith, but who also keep me grounded, and people who have been there and done that. And when I feel like panicking or I feel like the world is falling apart, I kind of go back to those elders, those people that I trust. And Dick Foth is one of those people for me.
He is. What a choice. I've met him, seen him speak, been with him. And there's something about people like that, just being with them, you're encouraged and inspired. And he's one of those people that, there you are.
There you are.
Mark, thanks so much for sharing with trusted leaders in our audience. Thanks for being my friend. And thanks for this time together. That's the Trusted Leader Show. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, stay trusted.